Check it out, Startup Nation. I know many of you are trying to improve your marketing performance, right? You have your business or your e-commerce store and you're trying to increase that brand awareness. No worries, I got you. You should listen to the brand new Keep Optimizing podcast. That's optimizing with an S and not a Z. It's a marketing podcast that will provide you with not only the latest tips and advice in the game, but also you will hear from experts in their field when it comes to email marketing, SEO, and more. This is a must-listen-to podcast for my e-commerce entrepreneurs. It's hosted by Chloe Thomas, who is a 15-year marketing expert, best-selling author, and award-winning podcast host. It's already a top 20 marketing podcast in 7 countries. So clearly, you're going to get amazing value every episode. So as you can see, Startup Nation, you're in good hands with my girl CT. So listen and subscribe to the Keep Optimizing podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you like to get your favorite podcast. You can also get more information at keepoptimizing.com. The link is there in the show notes.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation. So I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is The Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, despite lifted restrictions, many workplaces are continuing remote work throughout the summer as the pandemic worsens and in parts of the U.S. For companies who are struggling with drops in productivity, what if I told you there was a retired Navy SEAL sniper who can help reveal how to lead like a warrior when isolated from your team? And we have the perfect person to kind of help us out with that. He is a trainer, blogger, author, and entrepreneur. He has been featured on NBC Nightly News, the Discovery Channel, and also in Maxim and the USA Today. He is the author of The New Rules of Marksmanship. He is Chris Sajnog. Big Chris, what's up, man?
Not too much, Dominic. Thanks for having me.
No worries, man. Look, we all are looking forward to our conversation today. Are you ready to pour some knowledge into Startup Nation today? Because we can definitely use your help, man.
I was born ready.
I hear that. Quick shout out to our radio partners in Denver, Colorado, the Military Broadcast Radio. Everybody, you want to make sure we shout them out, as well as this is a special episode for all of us involved. So, Chris, if you would, man, just kind of share with us your origin story, if you don't mind, good sir.
Well, I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin.
Okay.
And I kind of had I kind of say it's like a rough upbringing, but it's like, upper middle class rough. It's not like I was out on the streets or anything.
Gotcha.
But I just didn't really like listening to authority. And that led to me moving out of the house early, dropping out of high school, kind of going in a bad direction. And I ended up without a place to stay. I ended up without a car or a job or anything. And I ended up meeting a Navy recruiter who said, "Hey, I'll give you a place to stay and give you some food. What do you think?" Gotcha. So that's when I joined the Navy. And interestingly enough, I didn't even know what a Navy SEAL was before I joined the Navy.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of what got me in the Navy. And then I spent 20 years in the Navy and ended up leading our SEAL sniper program. I wrote our curriculum for that. And so I retired in 2009. I'm in San Diego now with a wife and 2 boys. One of them 16 years old and about 6 inches taller than me. So I run online training right now.
Gotcha.
So it's been interesting, with the COVID stuff happening.
Of course.
I've been fortunate enough to have planned my business around teaching people online, and I did that so I could spend time with my kids, so I wouldn't be going places. So it's worked out well.
For sure. You know what? Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask a quick follow-up. Tell me about the curriculum part, because we have a lot of people, and I know you're a trainer and stuff like that. Kind of share with me your doctrine on teaching and coaching and stuff like that, and how that played a part in building that curriculum.
Well, when I retired from the Navy, I kind of continued teaching the same way I was teaching, Navy SEALs in our sniper program and other programs that I ran. And, so I would take civilians and law enforcement to the range and teach them the same techniques. And I realized it wasn't working. And I quickly realized it wasn't what I was teaching, it was who I was teaching.
Right.
Because in the SEAL teams, I was teaching other Navy SEALs to do anything. I could have taught them, didn't matter what it was, and they would have learned it because they're warriors.
Of course.
And they're, like sponges. They understand the need for knowledge and skill acquisition.
Right.
And so what I did was I came up with a way to really teach people to learn and live like warriors. And by doing that, people are able to very quickly pick up any skill that they want.
Gotcha. You know what? Kind of break it down for us. What does it mean to kind of, train and live and think like a warrior? And how does that, kind of relate to civilian life, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, the first thing that I teach is like your mindset. And one of the first things that I have exercises that I have people go through. It's really what the New Rules of Marksmanship, my new workbook, takes people through is, asking why. And, I'm sure you've heard and discussed it with others, but having a strong why for why you want to learn any skill is critical.
Very much.
And when it comes to, firearms training, if somebody just wants to learn to shoot to impress their buddies at the range, then when it comes time to train, they're going to, blow it off. They're going to hit the snooze on their alarm clock. But if we can get to, well, the reason why is I want to protect my family that I love, then, you're going to get up early. You're going to train as hard as you can. You're going to do what it takes to learn whatever skill that is. So, it's all about that. And one important distinction that I like to make when I talk about learning and living like a warrior is I teach the importance of being a balanced warrior. And a balanced warrior means, warriors have hard traits and they have soft traits, and they need to be balanced for you to be effective. So I teach those skills and the importance of that and how to stay balanced. And by being balanced, that's really when you're most effective.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. That's definitely, something we talk about often on this show, Startup Nation, is balance. I think a big part of what I want to take away and actually impart on you, Startup Nation, is that balanced warrior part. I think a lot of times we hear, the word or term warrior, and it's all about like, reckless abandon, bat out of hell, like, destroy everything and everything in your path or whatever like that. But you kind of talk about, something, it's not always just about that. And so when I think of balance, I think of that. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Very much so. And yeah, you hit it right on the head because, I'd like everybody to listen, you can picture a warrior from, 1,000 years ago or whatever, standing on a mountainside with a sword. But you could also picture that warrior very easily sitting on that mountainside and meditating, or you could see that warrior, drawing or painting. Being a warrior just means that you fight for something. And I like to always get it to fighting for what you love.
Right. So
whether that's your family, a cause that you believe in, whatever it is, if you're doing it out of love, I believe love is the most powerful force in the universe. Then you're going to be a balanced warrior.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing all of that for sure. I want to ask you this, and I know you can't get into specific stuff like that. I guess I just want to know about your overall, general experience going through Navy SEAL training. We hear about, stories, we see, documentaries, we see movies, we see, behind the scenes type of stuff. Just kind of give us your take, your commentary on going through SEAL training and some of the things that you learned from that.
I had a pretty interesting or unique journey through SEAL training, or what we call BUDS training.
Sure.
And part of it stemmed from before I was a Navy SEAL, I was a dive medic. So I worked with SEALs for 4 years as their medic when it came to diving and stuff like that. So I've been working with SEALs. I, knew hundreds of SEALs before I went through SEAL training. So when I went to SEAL training, about once a week, we would be out on the grinder, or where we do our little exercises, and I'd hear my name called, Sajnog, get up here. And I'd go run up to the front, and there would be a Navy SEAL that I had worked with before. And, the instructor would say, oh, so Petty Officer Sajnog, Chief Smith here said that you said SEAL training was going to be easy. And the only thing you can say to that is hoo-yah. So hoo-yah is the generic answer, depending on the inflection in your voice.
Right.
That means everything, but you can't say no, because if you say no, then you're calling that person a liar. So you didn't want to do that. So I would always have to go do something fun, like run down to the beach and come back with as much water in my mouth as I could. There's always fun little things like that. But, in general, if you pass the test to get into SEAL training, you have what it takes to make it through physically and mentally.
Fair enough.
The part you don't have is, and nobody knows until you go through, is kind of that emotional aspect of, can you basically just not quit? Because everybody in SEAL training gets pushed past what they believe they're capable of doing. So we've had collegiate swimmers that would show up there, and SEALs are known for being in the water, and what the instructors would do is they would just have that person swim alongside a boat until they felt like they were going to drown,
right,
and see if they were going to quit. And if they didn't quit, well, then they're good. But everybody, no matter who you are, you get pushed to that point, because that's really what we want to find out is when, it gets hard, are you going to quit on your teammates?
Got you. And that's definitely important. And I know, throughout the military worldwide is always about like depending on the next man. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let me ask you this, Chris. Let me dig a little deeper. Did you ever get to a point where he's like, I don't know, man, I'm getting close to that point where it's like, I might need to tap out a little bit. You ever get to that point? Tell me about that a little bit.
The closest I ever got was during Hell Week. And this is a time where you're, basically going straight for 5 days.
Sure.
Very little sleep. And we were running around in a circle with these little rubber boats on our heads. And I think it was like the third day of Hell Week or something. And I remember thinking, like, I am literally going to fall down and die. I was just so tired. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, well, I would rather people point down at me and say, well, at least he didn't quit, than to watch me walk over to the bell and ring it.
Right. Thank you for sharing. And I wanted to ask that because like there's so many business owners that we have in our audience where they get to that breaking point and they just kind of like, you know what? I don't know. So I appreciate you sharing that and transparency about that. I want to ask you this as well, because, you were also a sniper as well. And I imagine you go through training where you have to kind of like, where patience is, involved. Like I imagine there's a lot of like hours and hours and hours of patience and like maybe 20 seconds of actual action. How do you train your mindset to be that patient?
Well, that's interesting, because patience is one of the 12 traits that I teach about being a warrior and living like a warrior,
Sure.
Balanced warrior.
Absolutely.
And it's also one of the things when it's the first thing that I tell people is most important about being a sniper, because when most people think about snipers, what they're usually thinking of is marksmen. They're thinking of people who shoot. And being a sniper, shooting is actually one of the things you do the least.
That makes sense.
And you need to have that patience where you may sit on a target for days or weeks at a time, waiting for one thing to happen, or maybe it's not going to happen. And yeah, you definitely need that patience to be able to do that. And, patience just comes with training and discipline. Right. It comes with having that strong why, and even just going back to going through SEAL training, that no quit attitude, that gives you patience. And, to other business owners who haven't, not Navy SEALs and haven't been through SEAL training, I say just put yourself through hard times. Right. And, push yourself. You can push yourself physically, in, exercise or going on, a hike with a backpack, but just push yourself. If you push yourself really in any way, that's going to make you want to stop, and you push through that, that's going to really help you out.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask one last question about your background before we move forward with today's conversation, because I wanted to ask you about, you talk about sitting on a target, for, hours and days and sometimes weeks in advance, waiting for that one thing to happen. And I imagine it goes to a lot of planning, a lot of, strategy that goes involved. But let's say you find yourself in a situation, and this happens in military missions. This happens in business. This happens all over the place, where you do the strategy, you plan ahead, and, and it's time to kind of perform, if you will, and nothing goes as planned. Strategy goes out the window, and it almost kind of like there may be a point where like this may not go, this may not have the desired effect that I want. Talk about that mental fortitude to kind of turn the tide when things are just going terribly wrong.
I think the first thing to consider is realizing that if you just have one plan, everybody knows it, nothing goes according to plan.
Of course.
And I think that is where most people make their mistakes, is they come up with a plan and it looks good on paper, and then they try to execute it. And man, in my business, I'll tell you, that happens every week, where, I'm going to change this on my website. I'm going to move, I just got done moving my whole membership site to a new platform, and nothing went according to plan,
right,
to the original plan. But if you realize, okay, so if I know nothing's going to go according to this plan, you look at other plans and you just keep planning. And that's one of the things, that SEALs are known for. If you look at the raid that took out Osama bin Laden,
right,
they didn't have just one plan,
right, and
their initial plan went terribly wrong, but they had planned out so many other options. They had practiced what is going to happen if the helicopter crashes inside the courtyard, So right. When that happened, it wasn't like they were changing plans. It was just like, oh, we're doing this now.
Fair enough.
So, just keep planning and looking at, okay, what can go wrong? What are we going to do if that goes wrong? Have other people look at your plan, people on the outside, and we call it red teaming, where we, have people come in and try to punch holes in our plan and try to defeat it. And by doing that, you're coming up with all the answers. So it's not like things aren't going to plan. It's like things are just going according to a different plan you have.
Fair enough. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad you said that, Chris, because a lot of times we talk about that red team or that opposition to plans and have people poke holes in it, because a lot of times we have entrepreneurs and we have people who are not necessarily, entrepreneurs or business owners, but they may have an expertise in the field, and they can provide some very valuable resources and assets to that entrepreneur. And that entrepreneur is kind of like, you ain't ran no business before. I ain't listening to that. But, it's important to listen to those people from the outside. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you sharing that, Chris.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No worries. Once again, make sure we're talking to Chris Sajnog. Sorry.
It's a tough one. No problem.
Yeah. I do it all the time. My apologies, man. Here on the Startup Life for sure. So I want to talk about, now, we're dealing with this, a new enemy, if you will. It's one you really can't see all that well unless you have a microscope, I guess. It's COVID-19. And so kind of talk about the shift that you've experienced in your business and how you're training other people to kind of shift as well.
Well, when this first started happening and, we were going into social isolation, I was just, I thought it would not affect my business at all, which, goes back to even I need to be reminded to keep planning and red teaming what's going to happen.
Right.
And because I was like, well, everything I do is online now. I do in-person training, but very rarely. And
Gotcha.
it's very expensive, and I do consulting and stuff for other people, but almost everything I do is online. So I was like, oh, it's going to be fine. But I didn't take into account, well, my members and my teammates now, they are losing their jobs and not being able to get work. So the first thing that's going to, come off their list of needs is, a membership site. And so I started losing a lot of members. I was able to pivot rather quickly and offer some other programs and, adjust the pricing and give people discounts and stuff where I could. So, that ability to pivot was definitely helpful. And as far as helping others, other teams working remotely,
right.
The advice I give them is that you need to teach everybody in your team to be a leader. Because in the SEAL teams, one of the biggest differences with us and any other unit or group in the world is the way we look at and execute leadership. Because in the SEAL teams, everybody on the team has to be a leader, and they have to be able to step into the leadership role like flawlessly and just flow through it. And it's almost like if you imagine a flock of birds flying through the air,
mm-hmm.
They could be flying in one direction, and all of a sudden one bird becomes the leader and shifts direction, and the whole flock instantly follows them. And that's what we learn to do in the SEAL teams. And that's the way I teach leadership now, is get everybody on your team to become a leader. So you don't have to be over their shoulder looking at them and monitoring them. They're going to know what to do, and they're going to know when there's a void in the leadership, and they're going to step up to the plate.
For sure. Let me ask you a quick follow-up to that, because and I absolutely agree with that mindset of teaching everybody to be leaders. But do you also find in the result of your coaching and trainings this doctrine that not only are they prepared to be leaders if there's a void in the leadership role per se, but they're also that leadership mindset translates into whatever their role is. Like, let's say there's no change in personnel of leadership, but this person is in charge of exhibit A. This person is in charge of exhibit B, and they are showing leadership in their individual roles. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah. And that's a great question. One of the things that I love acronyms. So the acronym that I teach for teams to become leaders, for everybody on a team to become leaders, I actually use the acronym TEAMS, mm-hmm. which stands for take responsibility, encourage others, ask for help, master your job, and sacrifice for the team. Mm. And if everybody on the team is doing that, everybody is being a leader and everybody is helping out the team at the same time.
Right. Right. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely like that. Master your role. Master your role. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Master your job.
Yeah. Master your job. Yes.
Yeah. Because so many people, in teams, and like if you, I remember it, with my kids in sports where somebody would miss a shot kicking a soccer goal, and people would point out and go, "Oh, come on, how'd you miss that?" And meanwhile, that's the goalie that let, 3 shots go past him.
Right.
You don't need, it does no good to point at other people. And you need to encourage those people, and so you're encouraging other people and you're just worried about yourself and making sure whatever your job is, you're going to be the best at it.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. Check it out, Startup Nation. I know many of you are trying to improve your marketing performance, right? You have your business or your e-commerce store and you're trying to increase that brand awareness. No worries, I got you. You should listen to the brand new Keep Optimizing podcast. That's optimizing with an S and not a Z. It's a marketing podcast that will provide you with not only the latest tips and advice in the game, but also you will hear from experts in their field when it comes to email marketing, SEO, and more. This is a must-listen-to podcast for my e-commerce entrepreneurs. It's hosted by Chloe Thomas, who is a 15-year marketing expert, best-selling author, and award-winning podcast host. It's already a top 20 marketing podcast in 7 countries. So clearly, you're going to get amazing value every episode. So as you can see, Startup Nation, you're in good hands with my girl CT. So listen and subscribe to the Keep Optimizing podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you like to get your favorite podcast. You can also get more information at keepoptimizing.com. The link is there in the show notes. Auralex powers this episode of The Startup Life. Startup Nation, as a podcaster, radio host, and business owner, I know a thing or two about the need for your message to come through clearly to your target audience. The last thing you want when trying to close a big deal over the phone or giving a sales presentation in your conference room is to have the person you are talking to be distracted by either the fact that you sound like you're in a warehouse or an outside noise like a fire truck. Trust me, Startup Nation, I know this all too well from experience. And that is why Auralex has your back. Auralex Acoustics creates professionally tested products that you can trust in a commercial space or at home. Better office acoustics improves intelligibility when video conferencing or generic conversation, reduces stress, and helps build a proactive work atmosphere. From a home studio for my content creators to your office space downtown, your gear performs better in an acoustically treated room. Trust me, you are in good hands with Auralex as they are the #1 brand in acoustics, providing trusted solutions for over 40 years. Also, you can download the Auralex Acoustic Treatment mobile app in the Apple or Google Play Store to give you specifically designed and instantaneous recommendations for various room types. Go to Auralex.com and use the promo code STARTUP in all caps for 10% off your entire order. The link is there in the show notes if you are listening to the replay on the podcast. So if you are ready to stop sounding like you're having a sales meeting in a sports arena, go with Auralex. Professional audio made simple. Tresta powers this episode of The Startup Life. Okay, Startup Nation, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Tresta. Tresta is an app for iPhone and Android that lets you do business calling and texting from anywhere. I know so many entrepreneurs that are still using their personal phone number for business calls. It can get complicated drawing the line between your personal and professional life. Startup Nation, this is the best business phone app out there. Whether you just need a business phone number or if your team is ready for a complete business phone system, Tresta is totally flexible and can grow with your business. And it's all unlimited calling, texting, and all of the powerful call management features like auto attendance, call recording, user groups, and more for just $15 per user per month. With Tresta, there's no contract, and you don't need any special hardware, just your smartphone you're already using. Tresta is easy to configure, so you can set everything up yourself, all online, avoiding all the hassle and high overhead costs of setting up a traditional business phone system, which is important because as entrepreneurs, we are always trying to cut cost and time. They're offering a 30-day free trial so you can see if Tresta's virtual phone system is right for you. Communicate smarter and more efficiently with Tresta. Start now at Tresta.com/startuplife. That's Tresta.com/startuplife. The link is there in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Tresta, business communication simplified. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you this because, like you said, we're all kind of, for the most part, a lot of us we're working remotely and stuff like that. And so I imagine that it may be a bit difficult without being face to face, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see how this question goes, but it may be a bit difficult to kind of have that cohesion and that culture between your team and stuff like that. Or maybe it's not. What's your take on that? Because I imagine building a culture remotely is a little different than building a culture face to face.
Yeah, without a doubt, you're going to have challenges there.
Right.
One thing that I really recommend is that leaders of teams out there really connect on a personal level with everybody on their team.
Right.
And, this doesn't matter whether you're working remotely or in person, but you've got to, really connect with them on an emotional level. And, I talked about the importance of why you're doing something. And if you know that the people on your team are emotionally connected to you, they care about, your life and what's happening in your life besides, whatever your job is or whatever program you're working on, they're going to, really feel like part of a team. And, you can still do team building exercises remotely. You can do challenges and, do like workout challenges where, people are going out and coming back and pushing each other to stay in shape and get outside and exercise. It's still possible. Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a little harder, but you just need to, I think be more personal and look for ways that you can challenge each other.
For sure. I want to ask you this, I guess I'm looking for like a scenario or a story that you may have. Take me to a time where, you're, whether it be back when you were in this military service or maybe even now, on this side as a civilian. Has there ever been a time where you're trying to coach somebody up, train somebody up, and for some reason, because we all have it, or that person is just not getting it? Like, how do you get to the point or make the decision to where like it's time to either, keep coaching them up, shift their focus, or cut bait? Is what I'm asking. Kind of take me through your mindset through that, if you don't mind.
Sure. Very, very good question, because one of the biggest things or issues I've found in training others is cognitive dissonance. So where people, and the example I give is like with firearms training, is say your grandfather taught you how to shoot. He taught you how to hold a pistol.
Right.
And now along I come and I show you a different way that's scientifically proven to be a better way to hold the pistol, to control it.
Right.
You're going to fight against it. Like it's just not going to make sense to you what I'm telling you. And you don't know why. You're not thinking, oh, my grandfather taught me a different way, so I'm not going to do it your way. There's just something inside of you that's like, you don't hear this, but it's saying, if I listen to Chris, that means I don't love my grandfather. So the way it works is just really, it's just really interesting. I just love talking about it and trying to figure it out, because it is one of the hardest things to figure out, because they're not saying it, but you have to sense, okay, I am telling them this and they're not getting it. So I try to, I just try to keep working it. Gotcha. But the other thing when it comes to leadership and somebody that's just not getting it, one of the parts about being a leader is being strong enough and smart enough to do what I call eliminating cancers from your group.
Right.
And a cancer is anyone with a negative attitude or someone who basically looks at hitting the bare minimum as their standard. And I've got a saying that mediocrity is a disease and it spreads very quickly in any team.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And in that same vein, I want to ask you this, just kind of sticking with the leadership part of this conversation. Let's say, there's a situation where you as the leader have to make a decision. It's going to be an unpopular one, but deep down, long term is the best for that team. I guess I'm curious about, how do you go about communicating, with your team that this is the best approach? Like, even though like in the interim, after we make the decision and the beginning part of it is going to suck. Like I'm not even going to lie to you. It's going to suck, but over time it's going to be best for the team. How do you communicate that to your team? Because we know as leaders, you're always selling, always trying to, share that, what's the best course of action. Kind of talk to me about that, Chris, if you don't mind.
Well, that trust has to be built with your team. So you can't just go in and expect people to trust your decisions. I've got a great example of this when I was going through SEAL training. Absolutely. And it's what's called third phase of training. And it's where we do our weapons training and stuff. And I was our class leader. And we had done this training evolution where we essentially got finished at like 3 a.m. and we had an inspection the next morning at 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So we had 2 hours to get all our gear cleaned up, get everything inspection ready, and then try to get some sleep. Well, there was no chance of getting any sleep. But so what I did was everybody in my class just started climbing in their beds because we were all so tired. And I went around rack to rack and woke everybody up and got them to work and got them to do stuff. And my class hated me for 2 hours.
Right.
But we got no sleep, and the instructors came out at 5 o'clock or whatever time it was. And we passed inspection, and the instructors said, no class has ever passed this inspection before. And they gave us that entire day off. Wow. So we got a full day to rest and recover. So It's, sticking to your guns, doing what you know is right, and, force the issue if you have to. And when it turns out the way you're going to start, essentially getting street cred, and people are going to listen to you.
Let me flip it on you a little bit. What if it didn't go as planned? Like, what if oh man, you still failed inspection and this, that, and the other? How do you once again, you start talk about building that team trust on the front end, but now you definitely got to rely on it now because things definitely didn't go as planned. And now you have to go back to your team and you say what? Like, how do you apologize? You say you take accountability. What does that conversation sound like, Chris?
Well, I think you just got to know that you're doing the right thing. Gotcha. And by knowing you're doing the right thing, maybe you convey that to them. For instance, like I get strength from that. After I retired, I worked for Homeland Security for a while, and I was an instructor there, and they were doing very unsafe training, this group that I was working with.
Gotcha. And
I actually became a government whistleblower. And I had 500 pages of documents showing how unsafe their training was. And in the end, they didn't do anything about the training, and I ended up getting fired. And it sounds bad on the surface, but I am so proud for my sons to be able to, look at that and go, you know what? Yeah, my dad got fired, but he did it for the right reason. He did the right thing. Right. So always, just standing up and doing what you know is right, no matter what the consequences, that is, I think a defining characteristic of a leader.
For sure. Let me shift gears here because it's the second time you've referenced your sons. You talked about them earlier in the show about wanting to spend more, spending more time with them and how that's important to you. And now you're talking about how, they can look back on decisions like these and be proud of that. Talk about the perception of how your sons look at you, what you want your legacy to be when they look at that legacy. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about why that's important to you, Chris, if you don't mind, because it seems important to you, but I wanted to dive into that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that that's obvious because, raising my sons into men is my number one priority in life. Everything I do in life revolves around that. And, it came from, I grew up, my dad left when I was, I think, like 2 months old, and he never wanted to have a relationship with me. And, ever since then, I had said, man, no matter what, if I have children, I am going to be the best father there is. And so I ended up, when I was in the Navy, I ended up going on what would be my last deployment. And I came home, and my my sons wouldn't talk to me. They're 2 and 4 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And my 4-year-old, he wasn't eating, and he wouldn't eat for like 2 weeks.
Mm.
And finally one day he told me, I'm like, hey buddy, why aren't you eating? You need to eat so you can be strong. And he said, Dad, if I eat, I'll grow up. If I grow up, I'll become a daddy. And if I become a daddy, I'll have to leave my family.
Mm.
And that just hit me, like a brick in the forehead. And
did.
yeah, so, I realized, wow, yeah, my home address is the same as my son's, but I'm not here for them. I'm off on deployments, and,
right.
I'm not here. So I need to be here. So I was supposed to re-enlist for 5 years and get a $250,000 bonus. But instead, the day after he told me that, I went in and submitted my retirement papers.
I hear that.
And since then, I do everything I can to be the best father I can be. I've probably been on more fatherhood podcasts than I have on anything else.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it's a mission of my life. The reason I started an online business was to spend time with them.
Sure.
And they're my why. They're the why, when it comes to my business. And like I tell people, if my why for running this business was to make some money, well, I'll tell you what, right now, I don't need money. I could fully retire right now and be just fine. But I keep going because I want them to see, what it means to be a leader, to be a business owner, and that, they can do it, and, writing books and really doing whatever you want. I want them to see that. I need to be the best example I can for my sons.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. And once again, Startup Nation, we're actually wrapping up with Chris Sajnog, author of The New Rules of Marksmanship. And if you want to check out what Chris is all about, we have the website there in the show notes if you're listening to the replay on the podcast, chrissajnog.com. Also, check out that YouTube channel. You may find some cool stuff there as well. Hey, Chris, I want to ask you this. As a expert in what you do when it comes to marksmanship and stuff like that, we have and being in the military, and stuff like that. I want to ask you about this because, there's a lot of video games that kind of replicate, what you do, Call of Duty and stuff like that. And also movies and stuff like that. When you see video games and movies and stuff like that kind of emulate what you do you kind of roll your eyes? Is that kind of like a appreciation for the imitation of it? Kind of give your commentary on that. I'm always fascinated by that.
Yeah, so I'm kind of split.
Okay.
I'm very specific about things I will roll my eyes at.
Okay.
And so, for instance, if I'm watching a movie and somebody throws a hand grenade and a building blows up, which is something, if you've ever seen what a hand grenade does, that is not what it's like at all. It's a little puff of smoke, right. And, you just don't want to be near it.
Right.
But I want to see that in a movie. Like, that is why you go to see movies.
Fair enough.
It is to see things blow up and, things are larger than life. But things that do bother me are the endless magazines. So somebody's shooting a pistol that's got 13 rounds possible in the magazine and one in the chamber.
Gotcha.
And they're shooting for half an hour straight and never reloading.
Gotcha.
That bothers me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see. There's this story about Aaron Eckhart. He was in some movie. I can't remember what it was, where he said the line, and they had like a military consultant online, and he said, "Get to the chopper." And they the military consultant stopped the film, don't ever say that again. So I wanted to kind of get your commentary on that, because you say, "Well, I would never say that. Nobody would ever say that." So I just want to get your commentary on that for sure.
It is interesting. I can tell, and anybody else that's in the military can tell when a movie or a TV show has a consultant that has actually been in the military.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of times, I've heard of consultants, and I've looked them up and looked up their background, and they've never even been in the military. So good marketing, I'm guessing, on their part to get the job, but
for sure.
Yeah.
Would that be something you would be open to? like consulting for for Hollywood movie and stuff like that. I believe you're there in San Diego. You're not too far.
I am. And yeah, actually I have a TV show that I produced. It's called Fire Team 6.
Okay.
And so rather than just being a consultant, I'm actually a co-producer and actor.
Gotcha.
in the show. And it's a TV series that we've developed, and we call it action education.
Fair enough.
So each episode is based on actual SEAL missions, and then it keeps cutting back and forth where we'll do something during the mission, and then I will teach how you do that. So if I transition from my rifle to my pistol, I will teach how to do that. And then it goes back. And we think it's great. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be the Outdoor Channel was going to run it, and then I think they ran out of money.
Gotcha.
Or something. But yeah, we're still hoping anybody out there that knows anybody at Netflix or Hulu or
gotcha.
Anybody, we've got a great TV show ready to go.
I hear that. Thank you so much. Cut the check to my man Chris already. If you're out there,
yeah, you can go to Fire Team 6 on YouTube, mm-hmm. and you can see the sizzle reel for that.
There you go. Thank you so much for sharing that. And before I ask the last question, I just want to say once again, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. Once again, thank you for your service to this amazing country that we live in. And thank you for all the amazing, valuable stuff that you share with us here, Startup Nation, here on the Startup Life. We definitely appreciate all of it. But now I'm actually going to turn the microphone over to you, because you're very knowledgeable and very experienced in, training people, coaching people up. And there's a lot of people feeling a little discouraged right now. Chris, if you don't mind, can you kind of share some words of encouragement to take us out for today, if you don't mind, good sir?
Yeah, I think I'll just take it back to is finding your why. And if you don't have a why, you're going to be discouraged. And anytime you do get discouraged, if you have a why, all you got to do is go back to it and remember why you're doing what you're doing. And also realize too, I'm a successful Navy SEAL. Everybody, thinks, Navy SEALs, they never have any problems. Man, there's mornings I wake up and I do not want to get out of bed.
I hear that.
And I just got to think, well, wait a minute. I love my boys. What if my boys see me sleeping in all day?
Right.
So I get up and now I'm excited about it. I'm like, oh yeah. And I think another thing too that people really neglect is their physical health, their diet. That's one of the biggest things I teach. And, motivation it's your motive, but it's also your motive in motion. And being motivated means that you're moving. So if you are feeling discouraged and you're feeling like staying in bed and not getting anything done, go for a run. Get that heart pounding and, get in shape. And that movement, that is motivation. People think that motivation is like this magic pixie dust that's going to get sprinkled on you magically.
Right.
You've got to make motivation.
I hear that. You got to make motivation. I definitely understand that because it's more organic, it's more real, and probably more likely to be sustained. So I definitely understand that. Thank you so much, Chris. And that's going to wrap up our time here on the Startup Life. Once again, we want to thank Chris Sajnog for coming on the show. Appreciate you coming on the show, brother. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dominic.
No worries. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life. The Startup Life. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new Startup blog, where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life.